everybody. Today we're going to be previewing the World Cup final between France and Argentina. Before we get into the tactics that we'll see in the World Cup final, check out both my books. They're in the links in the description below. Also, be sure to check out my new tactics course. That's in the description as well. I'm making this video using Keyframe, and let's get right into the tactics of first France. So France, as we've seen, have played consistently throughout the tournament using a back four that has fluidity and favoring this left-hand side, advancing to allow Mbappe into the half space. Now, the other three defenders from France are typically going to stay more reserved, giving their structure balance, and we'll see a 4-3-3 playing throughout their midfielders with flexibility on this left hand side. Because of the fullback advancing, we'll see a double pivot forming at times, or overloading the space between the lines, allowing Mbappe to get more space and time and having his movement become more free. Giroud as the focal point of the number 9 pins central defenders and is a target to play off of for these attacking players. Griezmann along with Mbappe have shown their intelligence throughout the tournament, knowing when to position themselves higher up the field to attract defenders and allow them to jump, like Griezmann did in the first goal for France. They know when to position themselves closer to Giroud and when to play more between the lines in the cover shadow or the blind spot of the midfielders, trying to award themselves space to be able to turn and go forward. Now, out of possession is going to be key for France. They're usually very solid, but Morocco did highlight some of their weaknesses out of possession when they would drop into an asymmetric 4-4-2. We have our four midfielders dropping to try and cover Mbappe. And now the players in the right half space, this is Hakimi for Morocco, and Morocco had a lot of success on this right hand side. By positioning himself a bit more narrow, Hakimi was able to find space between the lines and just in behind Mbappe. So these diagonal passes entering the final third and using the half spaces became very dangerous, because now we have a diagonal route straight into the penalty area, and we have space out in the wide area as well if we want to go around the opposing team's block and progress in a wider situation. So this space behind Mbappe, because of his low defensive work rate, can be very dangerous. And with a player like Messi going to be occupying this area, it's going to be crucial for France to have some sort of plan to limit the availability in this right half space and not get exposed on this right hand side when they do have to defend deep. Because with a central midfielder having to jump out when the ball is shifted to one side, it can be very difficult, even with Griezmann dropping into the midfield, for players to gain access to these areas, especially when they have such short horizontal distances between them. Now we'll highlight the role of Griezmann in the defensive phase one more time. I know we've talked about it before, but it's such a crucial way for how France go about it. So Griezmann, he has more fluidity in his defensive role, as we see here. He plays a bit higher and in front of the midfield three, with Dembele dropping on this right hand side, Mbappe maintaining his position with Giroud as the two players highest up the field. But Griezmann has to have the intelligence of when to drop to make a midfield four and when to jump to create access to the holding midfielder when Giroud cuts the field. So these little decisions will make or break France in the World Cup final, because if Griezmann jumps too early, there'll be space between the lines for the Argentine players to then exploit and get on the ball. And if he doesn't jump and he falls back too early, there'll be space for the holding midfielders and the first line of Argentina to progress the ball and put France under a lot of pressure. Now for Argentina's tactics, we see them in their match against Croatia in their semifinal. They went with more of a 4-4-2, especially to start the game, moving away from their system to set central pressing traps and go with a more sustainable approach and a more passive approach to start the game against Croatia. So we'll see in their 4-4-2, Messi joins Alvarez as the two highest players and typically staying centrally and controlling the holding midfielders of Croatia. We then see the midfield for Argentina having a little bit more man orientation, that create shapes such as this, with the ball going into the wide area, almost creating a back five. But with this man orientation, it'll be crucial that Argentina have systems in play to control Mbappe on this left hand side and the fluidity of this French team. So Mbappe will come in off the left or create isolation. So either way, we'll need DePaul as the right-sided central midfielder or the right midfielder in a 4-4-2 to either help cover the fullback for Argentina, creating a 2 versus 1, or block access to these areas when Mbappe inverts. So either way, Argentina will have their hands full, especially with midfielders jumping between the lines to try and further protect this back four for Argentina. And one thing that Argentina will have to do is get pressure on the first line of France, not allow them to progress through the half space, because that's how Griezmann found the space to create the first goal when the central defender was able to progress, find a vertical pass into Griezmann. The defender made a mistake and they exploited it in behind. So this is a crucial area that Argentina have to address and have to get numbers around the ball side like they do here, shifting, planning to defend in the wide area, maybe a midfielder jumping with covering of the weak side holding midfielder in central areas, protecting the half space and the space between the lines. Then in transition, there'll be opportunities for Messi to pick up the ball and do what he's been doing this whole tournament. Now in possession, Argentina look to create a 4-3-3 with a lot of fluidity. We see here the rotations already starting with our midfielder dropping deeper, allowing the fullback to advance in the wide area, creating full width and creating more height for the team. We then have our midfield three with one holding midfielder that can very well change throughout the match. We can have our central striker, Alvarez, drop between the lines, creating a midfield four with three more advanced players, or we can have our wingers invert between the lines to create overloads on one side, and these fluid movements will be crucial against France, especially on this right hand side. It'll be crucial that we maintain full width, occupy dangerous areas, and create overloads to try and displace defenders on this right hand side when Mbappe does stay a little bit higher up with a low defensive work rate. But on the flip side, it'll be crucial that the rest defense is sorted out and prepared for a transition with Mbappe through this left wing, and adequate cover is given so they aren't allowed any fast transitions. So let me know in the comments below who you think will win the World Cup final and what you think the score will be. And I'll see you in the next one.